You ever have one of those nights when the world just feels bone cold and empty, and then, out of nowhere, you're handed a choice that changes everything? That's how it started for me, with my old truck creaking through the freezing rain on a back road outside Charleston. I was dead tired after a long shift at the shop, just aching to get home to my old wooden house. But something about that night felt different, like the darkness was holding its breath. My headlights barely cut through the rain, and I'm counting the miles left when I hear it. A cry, thin and sharp, slicing right through the drum of the storm. Let me back up a sec. It wasn't just any sound. It was the kind of cry you never forget, pure, desperate loneliness, the kind that pulls something up out of you. No matter how rough a day you've had. I slammed the brakes, heart pounding in my chest, and climbed out, rain already soaking through my jacket. The ground was all mud and weeds, and I was stumbling half blind. But there they were, two tiny girls, blonde hair tangled, cheeks streaked with tears, shivering under a ripped piece of plastic. Their clothes were so thin you could see the blue in their toes, and their eyes, man. Those eyes, like two little birds lost in a storm, looking at me like I was both hope and danger at the same time. Now, you gotta understand, I'm a black man alone in a mostly white town, and I know how that looks. I'm not naive. Any move I made could be twisted, could haunt me for years. But I couldn't just walk away, not when those kids looked at me like that. I fumbled for my phone and called 911. The dispatcher's voice was flat, distracted, too many wrecks, not enough cops, maybe 45 minutes before anyone could get out there. So I called the only man I trusted, Pastor James. He told me, "Do what's right, Damon. God will handle the rest." So I wrapped my only coat around those girls and stood there in the rain, just waiting, shielding them as best I could. Police finally showed up, looking tired and already stressed. "Reception center's full," the officer said, like that explained anything. In the end, they asked if I'd keep them for the night, just until CPS could figure something out. You know what I mean? I barely had enough for myself, but I signed the paper anyway, took them home to my drafty old place, and wondered if I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life. The next morning, Monica from CPS showed up, all business, scanning my house, asking about my life, how I grew up, what I did for work, if I'd ever raised kids. I told her about my own rough start, an orphan, scraping by, fixing engines since I was 10. She told me the girls' parents had died in a wreck, high on pills, left the girls at a bus stop in a panic before crashing on the main road. There were no relatives, no open foster homes, nothing but a 7-day emergency placement with me. I saw the neighbors peeking from behind their curtains, whispering about the black guy with 2 white kids, but I pushed that aside. I remembered what it was like to be 10 and abandoned at a bus station, how loneliness gnaws at you for years after. I wasn't about to let those girls feel that. Ellie and June barely spoke, clinging to each other, terrified of every noise. But something changed that first morning. June came over, quiet as a mouse, and set another spoon next to my bowl at breakfast. She didn't say a word, just watched me with those big, blue eyes. And in that moment, something cracked open inside me, like maybe this could be more than a temporary fix. Of course, nothing came easy. I had to call off work. My boss wasn't happy, and the bills started stacking up. I wondered how long I could keep this up, especially with CPS hinting that maybe the girls needed someone more stable. But every time I thought about giving up, I saw those girls' faces, how they'd flinch at loud noises, how they'd look at me for reassurance. I just couldn't leave them. Church was the real test. Walking in with those girls, all eyes on us, some curious, some judgmental. But Mrs. Grace, bless her heart, came right up, arms wide, called the girls granddaughters, and handed them clean clothes. Pastor James gave a little speech about love being stronger than blood, and for a moment, it felt like maybe, just maybe, we belonged. But nightmares still came. Ellie would wake up screaming, and I'd stumble in, clumsy, holding my old teddy bear and telling stories about the truck driver who once took pity on a lonely kid. "You don't have a mommy either?" Ellie would ask, and I'd nod, fighting back tears. Point one day, a police cruiser pulled up outside the grocery store just as we walked in. Someone had called in a suspicious man with two children. My hands were shaking as I handed over the CPS papers, trying not to look scared. The officer called his supervisor. Monica had to come down and sort it all out. That night, I told her, I just want them to feel safe, to not see the world like this. She squeezed my shoulder. You're doing better than you think. But I worried, always. Every unpaid bill felt heavier. Every whisper from the neighbors a weight on my chest. Calvin, my buddy from the shop, said, You're not their dad, Dee. You don't have to do this. Maybe he was right. But then Ellie and June handed me a crumpled drawing. 3 stick figures, one tall, two little, holding hands, with a heart and Uncle D underneath. I lost it, just broke down, tears and all. Right then I knew. This wasn't temporary. This was family, whatever anyone else said. Monica called with news. My guardianship request was moving forward, thanks to letters from Pastor James and Mrs. Grace. Still, it could take a year, and I had to prove I could provide, even as the car repairs dried up and the bank account thinned. But we made it, day by day. That winter, the church threw the girls a birthday party. Just a simple cake, some hand-me-down dresses, Mrs. Grace snapping pictures for Facebook. The story spread, quietly, changing a few hearts. Some folks still muttered, but others brought over soup or offered rides. Miss Sarah, the girls' teacher, invited me to share my story at a church potluck. I stood there, shaky, and just said, I was once a child no one wanted. I couldn't let these girls feel that. And something in the room changed. People listened, nodded, saw me, really saw me for the first time. Ellie struggled to fit in at school, but we talked every night. One day, Mrs. Shirley May, always quick with a comment, tried to stir trouble, but Mrs. Grace just smiled and said, Family isn't just blood, Shirley. Bit by bit, the walls came down. Late one night, Ellie spiked a fever, and I rushed her to the ER. The nurse gave me that look, black man, white child, but Monica sent the documents, and eventually the doctor, kind-eyed, just said, Everything all right, Dad? And I realized, yeah, that's who I was now. 15 years went by like a dream. The girls grew up. Ellie became a social worker, June a nurse. One autumn, at the Community Protector Awards, they stood on stage, proud and beautiful, and announced a scholarship in my name for orphaned kids. Family isn't just blood, it's love, they said, and I sat in the front row, crying harder than I had in years. Now, I'm just an old man on my porch, white hair, weathered hands, watching my grandkids play in the yard. Ellie and June come by with their own children, and sometimes we take out that old, yellow drawing. 3 stick figures, one tall, two little. I run my fingers over it, thinking about everything I gave up and everything I gained. You know, sometimes family is something you build, not something you're born with. On this porch, under the Appalachian sunset, I found peace, not because life was easy, but because kindness changed everything. So what do you think? Would you have done the same, even if the world didn't understand? Share your thoughts below, because sometimes the hardest choices are the ones that matter most.